तमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। We saw that who are the ones. First he talks about what happens to the wise person, that the person is released from what? The whole cycle of birth and death, because the causal which leads to different births, that itself is gone because of the knowledge. But who is eligible for knowledge is what is being explained by Lord Krishna. Okay, so we already saw some part, we haven't seen one part. And this is what is verse 10. So, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Manmaya Mamupashritaha Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Bhutamadbhavamagataha Okay. So we saw that this knowledge, in order for it to take place, one needs to have a certain relative mastery over oneself, and that was characterized by raga. We saw it is desires. Okay. Now we are not here talking about, as we already discussed in detail yesterday, we are not talking about eliminating desires, right? All we are talking about is when desires are not fulfilled, what? I have a problem. Okay. So that means that the desires bind me to then what? Free myself from the hold of the desire. Okay. How does one do it?
No knowledge that I know I cannot find anything in the object.
Yeah, exactly. So that means, why do we have a binding desire? Because we add much more value to that object, right? In the first place, we think that now this promotion is the end. If I don't get it, then I'm like, I associate promotion with what? My happiness, my fulfillment, I load it with so many things which it actually cannot give me. Okay? So the minute I begin to see that what it can give me, it's not that it cannot give me anything either. What it can give me and what it cannot give me, when that is clear, then what? My capacity to deal with it is much better. Okay? That is one way of doing it, giving it its own place and not seeing it through my own coloring. That's the first process. Right? The second process is to see that I have desire, there is nothing wrong with it. Okay? I perform actions to fulfill those desires, there is nothing wrong with it either. But when the results come, they are in whose hand? Are they totally in my hand? No. So once I understand that, then I understand that there are laws at work which combine so many variables, some of which are known to me and some of which are not known to me. Okay? So instead of entering a blame mode, which is what? Blaming somebody else or blaming myself, what do? I save all that energy which puts me on a spin, okay, to, if I want to actually achieve it, I can find out certain other variables and still continue to work on it, right? We are not saying because it is the order, the first time it has given me not this, so therefore I should leave it. We are not saying that. Okay? That is a misinterpretation of the order. So sometimes you don't get it, then you immediately give up. Why? Because you think, oh, order has combined everything perfectly and it has given me this result and it is not meant to be. That is not what we are saying. We are saying that I have identified some variables, there are other variables at work. Okay? So if I really am interested in getting it, I try to find out what are the other variables at work and work towards it. Okay? And also ask for help through prayers. Add one more variable to what? Increase the probability. Okay? Then ultimately, if I have seen that it is not a life-death situation, everything has only a certain value and not all what I impute on it, then my capacity to handle when things don't happen my way is much more. Okay? And it is not out of, oh, I should have that equilibrium. See, we make everything into rules. I should not have this and I should have this, rather than seeing certain realities which will naturally make me like that. Okay? So the whole thing is to understand something more which will naturally what? It's like this pumpkin, when it is ripe, it is naturally falling. So it is like that. Right? So this is what we saw, that every desire I can make it from binding to non-binding. And if I can make the desire non-binding, I am free to have a few more. And I need not be afraid of desires. Because I am master of my desires, they don't take me for a ride. Once I have that relationship, Ichha is a Shakti, and I can engage in the world freely, right, and accomplish many things. Why not? Right? But out of my fullness and not to fill the lack. Because filling the lack, generally desire becomes what? Desire for something else becomes a means for me to fill my lack. Now what do I know? That lack can only be filled through what? Self-knowledge. Nothing else can do that job. But that doesn't mean the objects are totally useless either. They have their own value, some objective value. Okay? So that is fine. And I can do it, but it's not that my whole being is dependent upon it. And otherwise what will happen? I will feel this roller coaster. When I get something, I will be elated. When I don't get, I will be depressed. And how many things I don't get my way? So many. Even the most powerful person, Obama, how many things happen his way? Look at the whole Middle East. Look at his own country and the Congress. Everything happens his way? Not at all. Okay? So if you're dependent on everything else happening your way, then everybody is a failure. But if your whole life is handling every situation with maturity and objectivity, then you can be very successful even though many things may not go your way. So you have to change the definition of success. What is successful? Who is successful? So one has to change that definition. Okay?
Which means I can have expectations in life.
Obviously,
but
yes.
I should not make them my demands that I have to have it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I may have it or I may not have it. I will try my best to get it.
Exactly.
I should not sit and say, okay, there is God, if He wants, He will give me, I want this, God will give me.
Exactly.
I have to work for it.
Yes, absolutely, because the so-called God follows the laws, right?
So I have to work for it, and then I have to be ready that I may get it or I may not get it.
Exactly.
And if I get it, I should not be elated that I am on the top of the world. And if I don't get it, I should not place myself so down that even putting my head up becomes a challenge.
Exactly. Right? And it's all done out of understanding. Understanding of how the universe works. Okay? Because nobody wants to be elated and depressed and all, but it happens. And it happens because they don't know how the world works. So the more I know how the world works, what object can give me, what it cannot give me. What can fill my void, what cannot fill my void. Okay? How are the results coming to me? These are all the very big questions of which people don't have answers. They don't think about that. That's why helplessly they are elated and depressed. Right? So that means if I don't want to be elated in that roller coaster, I need to know those realities and realign my thinking in keeping with those realities. Right? Otherwise it will just become, oh, I should not do it, but how? You don't know how. Yes? Okay. Now, bhaya, we also, it's a very important thing. We divided bhaya into what? Instinctive bhaya and the other one is psychological fears. Okay. Now, there is a very nice story in Advaita Vedanta tradition itself, and that indicates very well that we are not just talking about not having certain signals of fear, right, which enables us to protect ourselves. Okay. So there is a story that, just fun story. Okay. So there is a king and he has two advisors. One advisor is a philosopher and he is talking about Dvaita. Dvaita means Jiva Jiva Bheda, you are different from me, I am different from the universe, and the universe is different from, and I am different also from God. So Dvaita is defined as Jiva Jiva Bheda, Jiva Jagat Bheda, and Jiva Ishvara Bheda. Otherwise, people will ask you, what is Advaita? Advaita means, Dvaita means that. Duality means that I think I am separate from you, I am separate from the world, and I am also separate from the cause of the world. This is defined as Dvaita, duality.
Jiva Jiva Bheda,
Jiva Ishvara Bheda and Jiva Jagat Bheda. Okay. Now, what is Advaita? Advaita means all that is here is one. Okay. Jiva has one reality which is identical to what? The Ishvara and Jagat. Everything collapses in one reality which is free from all. Right? So this is what we saw. And so the king is intrigued by the Advaita philosopher because he's saying something which is so different from our intuitive understanding of the world. So that fascinates him. Okay? And Advaitin is in a very sophisticated philosophical world is just repeating what he already knows, that everything is separate. So he loses interest. You know, he's sleeping in this Dvaitin class and he's very interested in Advaitin class. Okay? So now this Dvaitin is very jealous. And he says, now how come king gives so much attention to this teacher of Advaita and why the teacher is sleeping in my class? Okay? So now he says, now let me find a way to put this Advaitin down. But he never finds it because logically Advaitin is so strong, right, that he cannot find any fault with what he's saying. Then one day they all go, the king goes for hunting. Okay? So they all go together with his two advisors, and then as they are going, when they are in deep forest, the Advaitin, the philosopher, he sees a lion. Okay? And then he immediately tells the king, look at this lion is coming and he's charging us. So they all run away. Okay? And then they go to a safe place. Now the king is so happy, even more happy with this Advaitin because he saved his life. Okay? So now he's giving him even more attention, that this Advaitin is not only giving me something interesting to think about, but also he's so alert, he's saved my life. Okay? Now Dvaitin is watching the whole show and he says, I got an opportunity to catch this guy. So then he goes slowly to the king and he says, Maharaj, did you see what happened? And he says, what? He saved our life. We would have all been dead if he had not detected the lion and asked us to run. Okay? He says, but you know what? He's talking about Advaita. Yes, he's talking about Advaita. Advaita means non-duality. Yes. It means only one. Yes. If if he really thinks that the lion and the individual and the king and everybody is one, why is he running away? Why is he running away from the lion? King said, oh yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. Right? If he's talking about one, then he should just go and what? Hug the lion. Because we are all both one. Right? And so then he gets very angry now. He says, my God, this Advaita with all this very, very logic which is all very involved, he has been fooling me. He himself ran along with us. Right? So he goes very angry to this Advaita and he says, you have been telling me about what? Non-duality, oneness. And you think everything that is here is one. Yes. Are you still maintaining it? Yes. Did you see the lion? He said, yes, Maharaj, I only told you that there was a lion. Did you ask us to run away? I said, obviously you have to run away, otherwise he'll come and kill you. So where is your non-duality here? Where is your oneness here? He said, the lion that you saw is mithya. Yes. The bodies that we all have, they are what? Mithya. Okay. So if the lion is mithya and the bodies that we have is mithya, when did I say the running was real? The running is also mithya. So that means in mithya world, you have to respond according to what is called for in a situation.
Common sense.
Common sense, exactly. Right? But while all these actions are happening, what is Advaita? Prapancha Upashamaha. While all these actions are happening, of bodies seeing another body, then wanting to protect themselves from a body which is danger to them, then taking right decisions and running away to protect themselves. While all this prapancha is happening where? Sthula and Sukshma. Obviously. And they follow certain rules. Okay. While all this is happening, Atma, which is awareness, remains what?
One.
Unaffected by any. This is Advaita. It's not that you don't have to run. Please understand that. Right? Because in that prapancha, what is called for at that given point in time is running away. Okay? The bodies are mithya, actions are mithya, the results are mithya. You have to make the whole thing mithya all the way. And within mithya, there is dharma, adharma. Nobody is denying that. That's why a wise person, somebody was asking yesterday, will not kill anybody. Right? Because while in the body, you cannot use the logic that Atma doesn't die, so let me go and shoot somebody, because what? His Atma will remain alive. That is you see what I mean? When in the prapancha, the wise men, when they are, or men or women, when they are transacting, what are the laws that apply? Laws of karma, laws of dharma, right? The laws of what? Making yourself more objective and reducing your subjectivity. You cannot bypass that. But while all that is happening, what makes the person wise is what? Knowing that everything is within mithya. That whatever happens within mithya does not touch satya. This is what we have seen. Otherwise you will completely use this knowledge of oneness and you will mess up your decision making. Please understand that. Okay? And let's come back to Bhagavad Gita. Okay? If vision of oneness is what Lord Krishna was telling Arjuna, right? Then what would be, if you don't apply this dharma, then what would Lord Krishna then have told Arjuna? If everything is one, Duryodhana is one, all the enemies are won. So now you go and embrace them, Arjuna. Why you want to fight? He would have said that. Please apply your understanding, because we don't even apply what we understand and see what is being said.
So there was the same example I was going to come to. So in that case, when he asked Arjuna to go ahead and fight, he was saying your law of dharma will supersede your karma, because while from a pure karmic perspective, killing is
Inevitable.
or a negative
No,
karma.
it is violence.
But
Yeah, it is.
your higher calling is your dharma instead of your karma.
Excellent. Yes.
So
In that
in a
vision.
human context, very often we might be faced with similar conflicts, right?
Dilemmas.
So does
Exactly.
dharma always supersede karma?
Yes.
Always.
Always. Yes. Because in fact, the thing is, but you have to interpret it accurately.
In that
Right?
Because there's a
situation,
gray area
Because there's a
sometimes.
gray area.
Yeah.
That's what. So this is why what Preeti is saying is a very, very important point. Right? She's making an extremely important point that non-violence, in Sanskrit it is called ahimsa, is a value, it's a dharma. Right? It is something which is universal. Somebody was asking some difference between cultural norms and a universal value. Now, non-violence or ahimsa, you will put under what? You will put under universal value. Okay? So that means that you don't harm anybody else. That is a general rule. Okay? But even though it is a general rule and it is universal, there are exceptions. Okay? And we all do that. Okay? So for example, if a very powerful person is in the position of power and is abusing other people left, right and center, and there is a mass suffering because of that, and you just say, oh, I'm going to, and you're in a position to fight and put this person down, and you say, no, I'm going to follow the value of ahimsa, what are you doing? You're letting this person who is what, extremely dangerous for humanity to continue doing the harm without offering any resistance. So that means that if you don't interpret this law of dharma accurately, what are you doing? You are causing more damage to the total ecology by inaction than what? Performing that action and what? Not for your own power. If the same action is done for your own power, then it is not, you are not fighting for dharma, you are just fighting for your own well-being. Okay? But if you are doing it for protecting the larger good, then even though you are not strictly following, right, this ahimsa, you are what? Still getting, this is exactly what Lord Krishna said, when you do what needs to be done, okay, then you will have merit. Don't think that you will suffer from the consequence. Because in this situation, what is called for is what? You have to, right? And that's what we all do.
And sometimes it's a very, very fine line.
It's a fine line. But this is exactly, so what actually determines whether it is an appropriate action or not is really your intention. Because if the same war Arjuna fought just to take a revenge, it would be a very different war. It is just a personal, rivalry, and it's an ordinary war. But if the same war is fought with the understanding that there is this person who has power and that he is abusing his power and so many people are suffering and many others are not capable of fighting him. But Arjuna was. Okay? So now he is placed in a position in the scheme of things where he has to respond. He has to respond. Okay? And if he doesn't perform that action, then what? He actually becomes the cause for this king to become more atrocities. That is the logic.
Because he didn't follow his duty to
He
protect.
didn't follow exactly to protect dharma and larger dharma. Okay, So this is why the dynamism of Hinduism is, the Vedic Dharma is very, very dynamic. Okay? It's not like rule-based. Do this and don't do this and don't think about anything else. Just follow blindly the rules. The whole human maturity is about how accurately you interpret dharma. Okay? And that's why there are so many grey areas, and that's why you make your buddhi finer and finer, okay, so that your capacity to assess what is called for in a situation becomes what? More and more subtle and in keeping with the laws of dharma. Okay? And then you ask for help. You pray Gayatri Mantra, give me the clarity. Give me the clarity, because sometimes it's not easy to find out. Because as Preeti says, the line is sometimes very thin. And the same war can be fought with many different intentions. And what is the result that you are going to get will not depend upon how many people you killed, but what was your intention behind that.
So it goes back to yesterday's point.
Exactly.
Intention is a huge...
Intention plays a very huge role. This is why any action can become what? Sattvic, Rajasic or Tamasic. 3 people are doing same action of giving. But one Sattvic, the other one Rajasic, and the third is Tamasic. Depending upon to the overall ecology, are you enhancing things or are you depreciating it?
And this is also where the subtle and intelligence play such a huge role, because I can state one intention, but
I can have another
subtle intention, and the universe picks up on my
Picks
subtle
up.
intention,
Absolutely.
not my stated one.
Exactly. And
So
this
you've
is why
you've got to be watchful of your own thinking and your own mind.
absolutely, Preeti,
Inner
because
dialogue.
you can fool the world, but there is no way you're going to fool all intelligence.
Because that
all knowledge.
intelligence resides within.
Within, exactly. If it was external entity, he may overlook, right? But it's in and through everything.
Choose.
Exactly. Very good point, Preeti. Okay, so this is something that you need to understand, that this fear that we are talking about, coming back to the story, right? You have to respond. You have to respond to that situation appropriately. We are not talking about, right, using this, all that is one, to translate into being non-discriminative in your action. That is the biggest problem people have when they study Advaita Vedanta. Because in the empirical world, what laws apply? Laws of physics apply. You can't say everything is one and awareness does not change. So let me go and jump. Because laws of gravity apply. Don't think that they don't apply, because awareness does not change does not mean the laws of gravity stop applying. Please, that is a silly thing to do.
So that means in the empirical world, it is duality. There is duality.
There is no real duality. There are
But
forms. There are forms.
There is
No.
a different relationship between what you said.
See, duality is it's a very different.
But Dvait is that, no?
No, 1 minute. Dvaitam means I am fundamentally different from you. What we are saying, there are many forms. Forms are many.
Yeah.
And the laws which govern those forms are many. Okay? But they all are mithya. They depend upon one reality for its satyam.
Correct.
Many forms don't make duality. Please understand. Many forms just is an appearance. The content is one. So you see, that's what we say. We are not denying many forms. We are not denying many different laws. And within the empirical world, all that applies.
So does that mean that the Sanskrit use of the word Dvait and the English use of the word duality is different?
I
Are
don't
we
know
not
how
talking of the
in
same
English duality. See, duality is a philosophy. When we say Dvaita, means for them, duality is the reality. Which is everything is different from the other. This is what we call Dvaita philosophy. because it's a philosophy.
Can you
That
expand
means-
on this a little more?
No, so
This
then
will-
why did you use this Dvait, Jiva, Jiva, Bheda and
Yeah.
that over here?
Exactly, because Jiva Jiva Bheda, Jiva
At the
Jagat.
form level, we are different.
Sorry?
At the form level, we are different.
Yeah,
That's
form-
what you're saying here.
No, no. Please understand, please, this is a very important point. The Dvaita philosophy, we are not talking about just duality, okay? We are talking about Dvaita philosophy. What they say is, in the absolute, ultimately, everything is different from the other. Okay? That means one human being is different from the other. Full stop. There is no point of resolution or anything. The individual is different from Ishvara. Full stop.
So they do not acknowledge the commonality.
Exactly.
So it's black and white.
It is like Ishvara is outside, right? And sitting somewhere. That's all. Finish. Okay? And the Jagat is something which is different from me. Finish. Over. Okay? What we are saying is, forms are different. The laws which govern them are many. Okay? But the whole thing is an appearance. The content is only one.
And that's the Advaita.
That is the Advaita.
They recognize the different forms, but say the underlying factor is common.
Exactly. And
Which
the
is
forms
obviously
are
more-
mithya. For the Dvaitins, forms are the reality. They are not mithya. They are real.
Will you repeat? Forms are different or Advaita. Laws are
All
Content is
many.
the same.
many.
Yeah.
Then in what context did you use this?
But-
Dvait, this Jiva, Jiva?
Yeah, because for them everything is
For
just
them.
different. Yeah. For Dvaitins,
So you were just distinguishing what they are saying,
from what we are saying.
what we are
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
It was not that you are saying it.
No.
That's what I did.
No.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that in the
That
court.
this is what they are saying.
Yes.
Yes.
In the
But
court.
it is not so. That is what you are saying.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. In a court of the king, there were two people.
I got
One was a
that.
Dvaitin
Yeah.
and the other one was Advaitin. So then, who is this Dvaitin? I was defining who is the Dvaitin.
Okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying
No,
this to
no, no,
explain,
no.
so that's where the
No, no,
confusion.
No. No, I think I thought I
Maybe
did.
I must
Yeah,
have
okay.
not.
Yeah.
These laws are many, and third statement you said. Forms are
Content-
different,
content
laws
is
are
same.
many.
Content is same.
Yeah. And all these are appearances, right? They all have a dependent reality. Okay? And they all depend on one reality, which is free from whatever is going on. This is what we call Advaita. We are not denying the many forms. We are not denying what? Many laws. And we are not denying that in the empirical world, you have to take into account the laws which apply in the empirical world. If you don't do that, you will be just creating a mess, as shown in these situations. Arjuna's situation, what Lord Krishna tells him to do, in the king's situation, what you expect that, oh, once you know everything is one, means the distinctions go away. The distinctions don't go away, the forms are many.
It all depend on one reality, awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Which is free from everything.
Or Atma.
Yeah, awareness is Atma. It is Atma, absolutely. Awareness is not some other third object, right? Which is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Atma. So you understand?
Just to summarize the Advaita philosophy in your words would be,
Yeah, the summarization of Advaita philosophy means that for them, the reality is, I am different from Ishvara. Full stop. There is no point of
Advaita.
resolution or anything.
Dvaita.
no,
This
it's
is
not Advaita.
Oh, you're talking about Advaita. The Advaita philosophy is there are many forms. We are not denying that.
But one reality.
Exactly.
So you would say, in spite
In spite of
the
many forms.
differences, there is one,
One.
Okay.
underlying oneness.
Okay.
I just wanted to sound.
And there are many forms and there are many different laws which govern how the forms work.
The Hare Krishna people are Advaita. They make a difference. You
Yes,
can never
exactly.
become like Krishna.
Yes, exactly. So they are Advaitins, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, like there are so many sects. So which are Dvaitins and Advaitins?
Yeah, so yes. Anybody who's not saying all that is here is one is a Dvaitin. Right? If you make any distinction anywhere, then you are a Dvaitin. In fact, in this Karika of Gaudapada, there is a whole prakarana, Advaita prakarana. Okay? In that, some of the Dvaitin schools are discussed. So it will come. It will come. This is why I am saying Mandukya Upanishad is it's a quite an advance. So some of these Dvaitin philosophers will come, and then we will show how what they think does not hold logically. We'll see that. It will come. Yes? So therefore, here we are not talking about just kind of completely deconditioned, if a psychologist meets a person who is unable to protect oneself when one sees one object, will they call them wise or fool?
Pardon me? I was just completing this point.
A lion comes and the person is unable to respond and run away, will you call them a wise person or a fool?
No, in psychology it would be taken as there will be three type of responses. One will be fight, so you fight with that lion. Second will be flight, where you run away, and third will be fright, where you freeze. So there is no wise, or it will be on you how you respond.
Well said.
Yeah, that is wonderful, right? So but what is a better response? Because
Behind
if you
all three responses, the reality remains the same, that even though the forms are different and you're responding because of your own, subtle whatever instincts you have, there is oneness between the lion and you, which is the other.
that doesn't take away from it, right? Even if you run away, it doesn't take away from the oneness.
It's the physical or the subtle which
Stool
is
and
reacting in the whichever
Exactly.
way.
The law,
Absolutely.
the law of food chain is acting. The lion
See-
is going to attack you.
See, if
There's a food
it's
chain.
for example, if it's a bear, fright will be the best response, because if you run, bear will be after you. So depending on what the
About-
danger is,
Exactly.
see,
So that means there is always still one response which is better than the other, in the
Yeah.
sense that in one you save yourself and in the other one you fall
you
prey.
may,
Yeah. So therefore, in that, now let's go, because otherwise we can discuss this in satsang, because it's a nice point, right? So in fact, who is in front? But that's what I'm saying. It requires a discretion. You can't use Advaita logic. You can't say all that is here is one. So let me not have the discretion. This is what I need to say. Okay? In the empirical, you have to use your discretion. Okay? Otherwise, you will just mess up everything. So this is what. But at the same time, these psychological fears we saw are what? You build up a huge story. One is an instinctual fear. We are here, you have to do that, right, to protect yourself. But if you sit and if you imagine, now this, the economies are going down, so now what is it? You create a huge gloomy picture, right? So this is what we call psychological fear. It has not yet happened and you've created such a huge picture out of it, and the fear isn't external. What are you then afraid of? What you
Your
have
own
created.
imagination.
Exactly, right? So that is something which the wise person has not God. In fact, in order to be wise, one has to first deal with this. Because unless one deals with it, one cannot become wise.
I would like to make a point about this fear, but I'll make in satsang.
Okay. Now, if you want to say
No,
now
no.
something very
With
important.
that point, I can make
Okay.
in satsang.
Yeah, so you can say it in satsang. Now, krodaha, anger. Now, it's exactly the same, right? Now, the person, first of all, what is this anger? Anger is one feeling, what? When things don't happen your way, or you feel that you have been wronged by somebody intentionally. Okay? So there are so many, or there is a general dissatisfaction towards life or how you have been treated or whatever. There is a lot of anger. Okay? So this anger, because we always find reasons for this anger. Okay? So therefore in our hand, in our vision, the anger is justified because I can identify the reasons why I am angry. So therefore, then what happens? You say, oh, now order is there, so that there is a cause and then there is an effect, and so the causes are Ishvara, the effect is Ishvara, so my anger is Ishvara. So, but the consciousness is never affected by it. That actually, and you will continue, my shouting is also Ishvara. And by getting violent when I am angered, that is also Ishvara. Can you use these kind of logic to apply Advaita? Not at all. Okay? This is why Lord Krishna says, in order for this knowledge to take place, you first need to take care of your anger. Because unless you take Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, unless you have not freed yourself from this, forget about knowledge. Okay? So that means I need to first acknowledge my anger and not escape the anger by saying awareness is never affected by it. If I have a dysfunctional emotion which I keep telling you, I need to make it functional. Once it is functional, I can say yes, it is mithya. But I have no choice in first making it from dysfunctional to functional. This is how the order operates. The order, the all knowledge, as Priti says, pervades everything. You need its blessing to remove the veil. Do you decide when do you remove the veil? Who decides? Equally Ishvara, the laws of Ishvara, decides when that veil is lifted for you. And the veil is lifted when you are ready for it, not otherwise. And you can pretend, as Preeti is saying, how much ever you want externally. You can quote Vedanta left, right and center. It doesn't, you don't fool all knowledge. Because it's right there, inside you, governing you, not out there. Okay? So this is where anger one needs to address. For addressing, you first need to acknowledge it and not try to escape it under the guise of Vedanta.
I think if we manage the first one, with Raga, then probably
Krodha will automatically go. Wonderful. Can you elaborate on that? Wonderful. Correct.
Okay, so if we are not dissatisfied, if our desires are unfulfilled, and we are ready to make a positive effort in the direction if we can, then there will be no scope for anger. We will be more occupied in thinking of the right method to go forward.
Very, very good. He is making a very, very good point. Right? Uddhav, can you explain to her?
Oh, okay. So So if you think that if you are okay, if your desires are unfulfilled, okay, and you are still ready to make a positive effort and work towards it, and you're not dissatisfied about it, then you won't be angry.
Okay, so in that case, we need to look into what causes anger. What causes anger? He's connecting it very well by saying that actually anger, a lot of the time, anger stems from, right? You really want something, whether it is a person or a situation or an object, and if you don't get it, then what happens?
If you are dealing with other people, like we are all in this living room and we are all changing ideas, and somehow people don't agree with each other and they get angry with each other. How do you deal with a person instead of a desire of a promotion?
Okay, so that means again it's the same. It's the same thing, right? Let me actually give you a real life example. What you are saying is exactly what somebody came to us with. This problem somebody came to us with, right? So now let's talk about that person. Obviously, I am not going to give names. Obviously not, right? So there is this guy who is a banker, a very senior banker. Okay, and he came to us saying that he has this huge problem with anger because he's quite a senior position holder. So when there is a meeting, people are expressing different opinions, right? And if people are expressing different opinions which are different from what he thinks, he gets angry. So therefore, now that is a handicap, but then it can actually be detrimental to his career and to, because if you begin to get angry with people who have different ideas, then you don't do well in life, right? So this is when he wanted to somehow manage the anger. Okay? So therefore he started talking to us, and we started because I don't know what causes that anger. So I just have to ask him, right? Because he knows his life much more than I know his life. So then I said, obviously you know that everybody doesn't agree with you. Everybody has different ideas. He's too intelligent, he knows that. Okay? So it's not a problem of not knowing that each individual has different ideas. And in fact, no two individuals have identical ideas, generally. Okay? So that means, in spite of knowing the fact that people have different ideas, when people actually do, and it's okay to have people to have different ideas, but when in situations when people do have different ideas, he cannot handle it. It's not lack of knowledge. Something happens, right? And something triggers his anger. Right? So then what we did is we just kind of started talking to him, and then he himself came up with this story of his life when he said that, he himself realized as he was talking to us that when he was young, he really wanted to be a cricketer. Okay? So he was excellent cricketer. He went in the under-19 team, Indian under-19 team to be a cricketer and all that, and that is something that he wanted his profession to be. Okay? Now, his parents panicked because they said, cricket means what? If you don't come in the national team, what happens? You are just nobody. So the parents wanted to secure a good future for him. So they almost pushed him to become an IT professional. Okay? So now you have one idea, which is a very strong idea, which is a very strong desire. Okay? And now somebody has come and intervened, right? And to such an extent that you cannot fulfill this desire. This is what Buddha is saying. Okay? So what you think is an obstruction to your fulfillment of desire becomes what? An object of anger. So that means you are holding this great anger towards your parents for not letting you do what you really wanted to do. Okay, so there is all this dormant anger which is all lying there. Okay, now he is in an office. Okay, and there is what we call a meeting going on, and somebody disagrees with this person. Okay, what happens? He is not responding to this person. What reminds him? In the unconscious, what is stored? The memory of I really want to do something and now somebody is opposing it. So what he is reminded of is this something which is lying dormant, which has really changed his life and has caused a lot of anger in him. Okay? So that means now when that situation is only a trigger. Okay? So now the person is not responding to that situation, the person is responding according to what? What all is held as a memory, which is such a strong memory. Okay? And the person reacts. The person doesn't want to react and still it happens. So this is why a lot of times the anger that we express in that situation, we think that given situation is causing anger. At times the causes lie somewhere completely different, and that situation only becomes a trigger point where all these things just come out, they burst out. Okay? So in order to then you to address this anger, you can't go to what? Awareness which is not changing. No, you need to say, now I have a problem with this anger, now this is the cause, now what do I do? Because this is following, my anger is following laws of Ishvara. I cannot bypass laws of Ishvara. Okay? So now what do I do? First of all, the very fact that I have recognized that this is causing anger itself is a huge first step in my doing things differently. Because next time when I am in a meeting, okay, I will not be caught unaware by this emotion. I know what is going on now. Where is this frustration coming from? The person in front is not really the cause. It is my own baggage that I am carrying. Okay? So I'll be much more mindful of my response than before, because now I have understood what is happening. Okay? So this is the first step. The second step is that there is some innate frustration that you really wanted to do something and you could not do it. So what he did is he gave it a constructive expression. What did he do? He started going to a county, because now he cannot join cricket team, he's very old, right? But he started going to a county cricket and he became a cricket coach. That means he is giving expression to this desire which was so much there, which remained unfulfilled, which was causing, so that means he is healing himself. Okay? By addressing that need, behind every anger there is this need which is unsatisfied need. Surya recently gave me a book, Non-Violent Communication. Okay? Non-violent communication means that this anger is, he said, you must understand, you think the person is causing anger in you. No. He says your anger is your unsatisfied need. And you need to identify that unsatisfied need and you need to address that unsatisfied need. Until you address it, that problem will remain. You have to find a way to help yourself. You have to find a way to heal yourself. Okay? So this is what he did. He healed himself by engaging in cricket in a different capacity, not as a professional, but as a coach, teaching the small little kids. He loved it. he just really started enjoying, and in the office he was very aware what was happening, so he was much more able to check it. This is how you deal with your emotions without denying them or without trying to bypass them.
Would you add one more tier to this? The more we can live with the philosophical acceptance of the fact that action is all I have, my action is all I have control over. Outcome is almost never in my hand.
Yes.
So I will give my best to make my point of view
Yes.
known. If at the end of the day everyone disagrees and outcome isn't what I want, that's just the way it is. So not to let that ruffle me, because I don't expect every action to yield the perfect outcome.
But as I said before, Preeti, that they understand, they're smart people, right? They do, they may not understand in the terms that you said, but they do understand that people do have different opinions and they are free to express their opinion. Who are they to just say that you are just following? They know that. In spite of knowing, it just happens. They are helpless with reference to that. See, the cognitive mind knows it, but they are helplessly driven into this emotion sometimes. Patterns of behavior.
Core belief of the existence, especially with people who have anger related issues, is that everyone, all significant others in this world should behave in the way I want them to behave. And when that doesn't happen, then that significant others can be anyone. He can be my driver, he can be my father, anyone, but they have to behave in the way I want them to behave. Otherwise, so that I so much, and especially in such cases, because my people, they did not let me do what I want to do. So now the
Control freaks.
so they never come out of that core belief. Why would others want to behave the way you want them to behave? Why will they behave? They have their own brains, they have their own hearts, so they will follow that. But no, this doesn't dawn on them, and they always feel that I am always right.
This is a thing, So this is a very good observation. And the second thing is, I think Surya reminds me, which is a very good point also, and I think you may agree with it. Because many times, then people say, oh my God, I'm carrying so many distortions at times, right? And then all the causes, what happened in childhood, what, all that I may not even remember. So now how will I fathom it all? Okay? So this is where this so-called cognitive psychology comes, and they say, even if you can't trace back all the events which are leading to these distorted emotions, you can challenge the emotions right now and inquire into their validity without going back to, oh, what was that big event which I'm carrying. Okay? You just say that, as Preeti is saying, that people are disagreeing, I have to question myself, hey, will everybody have the same opinion? I myself will be able to answer what? No. So why am I thinking that everybody should think like me? One can question oneself and one's own assumption and break that pattern of expectation. Because until you break that pattern, you'll always feel all my loved ones should do exactly what I want them to do. So that means at some point, you
And
need
always.
to always.
Always.
Exactly.
It's not at one point, always there.
Always do. Absolutely. So that means you just need to question and challenge that assumption, and then you can undo it. Okay? So there are many different methods to what? Reduce those distortions. Okay? And those have to be reduced. So this is what
Our
he says.
cognitive psychologist, they say, Dr. Albert Ellis, he always says that we are psychologists, not archaeologists. So we are not archaeologists. So today, at present, what is the issue? Deal with it.
So sometimes you can find past causes,
Yeah, sometimes.
but not always. It's not a necessary
It's
condition.
not a necessary.
So this is something that Vita Raga Bhaya Krodhaha, then Manmaya Mamupashritaha. Even if you deal with, even a psychologist can actually help you to deal with your Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. So every person who deals with Raga, Bhaya and Krodha will not become a Gnani. Right? So what else is needed? Okay, taking refuge in me, okay, and what? Purified by discipline of knowledge. That means you not only have to deal with your fears and angers and anxiety and all, you also need to what? Expose yourself to this teaching which is revealing to you what your nature is. Because just by doing that you don't become wise. You need both. Okay? You need to work on your relative being, and you need to understand that ultimately I do need to understand there is no end to my psychological well-being. Okay? But the only way to fundamentally get out of this limitation is knowing my true nature, and knowing my true nature also involves knowing the nature of Ishvara and asking for Ishvara's help so that this whole process of knowing is what? Going well without any obstruction. So this is what it says, that both the things are needed. One actually reinforces the other. The more you make your psychology healthy, the less distortions your mind has, more it is able to capture the ideas of Vedanta accurately. The more you catch the ideas of Vedanta accurately without mixing up things and all, more what? Psychological space you have to deal with your things without dissociating with them. So one thing leads to the other. You grow in your clarity until the time that things become absolutely clear. Okay? A wise person, please understand this, is not somebody who's only thinking about awareness, 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 awareness. That is not like mugging all the time. I'm awareness, I'm limitless, I'm limitless. Every second, is that what wise person is? Not at all. Okay? A wise person is not mixing up realities. What does it mean? The different forms are empirical reality. I am not negating them and saying all that is here is one. The empirical reality is a fact, but it is not the absolute reality. So the wise person is alive to empirical reality and he gives the right place to that empirical reality. This is Vyavaharika. Okay? A wise person is also alive to the fact that while we are transacting in this empirical world, sometimes we are subjective. And that subjectivity, once I recognize, I correct it. I use my free will and I correct it and bring it back to the empirical thing as much as possible. But in addition to the empirical and the subjective, there is one more reality, which is also the Paramarthika, which is the absolute reality about myself, which is I am, this actionless awareness. So that means all the three are known by the person, and each one is understood at that level. There is no mix-up. Okay? The laws of empirical behaviors are not applied with reference to that oneness. Okay? When I am subjective, I am not trying to bypass that subjective and making making it into empirical, but just using this Paramarthika to escape it. So all these confusions in how I receive this knowledge and how I apply this knowledge with reference to my life, there are so many muddles while the person is listening to Vedanta. Those muddles are undone by the person. There is clarity. There is a clarity emerging at what level it is happening, what I need to apply at this level. Then the person is not confused. The right response. That's exactly Lord Krishna was saying. Atma is one, but right now you need to fight. because in the empirical world, you have to, Lord Krishna was making a distinction between Duryodhana and Arjuna. He was also making a distinction between Karna and all the Pandavas, and he was also choosing the time at which he tells Karna the reality about his own identity, hoping that Karna will not take the side of Adharma, because he was a very evolved person. Very, very clever. What to do, at what time, in what manner, very lucid. Not everything is one. That is that is a joke. Okay? That amount of lucidity the wise person has. So this is what makes a person wise. Not mixing up things, just seeing things as they are. Seeing where is the problem and dealing at that level. That is the greatest clarity, and that is going to bless you. Right? So this is the person who is pursuing me as well as taking care of one's raga, bhaya and krodha. Then this is the person, Bahava Jnana Tapasa. That whole process of getting everything right takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. So please don't think that, oh, I do what, 10-day retreat and then I get it all. Or I do 3.5-year course and then I become a wise person. Okay? That takes time and it takes effort. And that's why, as Sara says, I'm not in a hurry. Lovely. I make my effort, but I can't force it.
It's an ongoing process.
It is an ongoing process because your buddhi has to mature. Your buddhi has to mature to a very, very fine level before this knowledge can take place. Nobody can hurry it up. There is no hurrying up here. You're not in a hurry also, that doesn't mean you just sit back and not make enough effort. This is again, we fall from one extreme to the other. We never have the right perspective. Either I'm all obsessed about it, when is moksha coming? When am I going to get my freedom? Right? Or I'm like, yeah, Ishvara will decide, so let me just relax. Both are equally dysfunctional. What do I have in my hand? I have to take care of my subjectivities and I have to make an effort to listen to Vedanta again and again. That is within my free will. And I use it wisely to do both so that I am blessed with this knowledge. This is the right perspective. So that means Bahavaha. He uses Bahavaha Jnana Tapasa. There is a tapas in this effort in both directions is not an ordinary effort. Okay. Bahava Jnana Tapasaha Puta Madbhava Magataha. At one point they become deserving of this knowledge and they get it. The veil is lifted from these people who are ready for the knowledge. So, the next verse is, then you think that now he's saying that those people who make an effort towards knowing the reality of Ishvara and of oneself, okay, they are the ones who come to me, he says, Lord Krishna. Then what about all the others? They are all doomed to hell? No. And that's exactly what Neeru was saying in the morning. He makes his statement, whoever is doing whatever is they're all within me only. One is pursuing me totally, others are pursuing me partially in one form. Okay, that is exact. So don't think that only the people who are interested in moksha are coming to Ishvara. Okay? Everybody, through what? Your money, you are pursuing Ishvara. Partial pursuit of Ishvara in form of wealth. When you are a physicist, you are also pursuing Ishvara. Ishvara in form of what? That intelligence which makes the galaxies what they are. Everybody is pursuing Ishvara. No, not only the people who are coming to this knowledge. This is what he says in the next verse. We will see. He says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tathaiva vajamyaham mama vatmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Beautiful verse. He says, those who worship me in whatever way, I bless them in the same way. Okay? Partha, people follow my path in all ways. Okay? So that means if you are interested in money, so you as an individual, are you away from all knowledge? The very manifestation is what? Manifestation of all knowledge. The other object that you are following, is it away from all knowledge? No. Right? And then the known variables, that if I want this, I need to do this. That knowledge is what? The knowledge of the laws. That laws are away from Ishvara? No. Right? So no matter who is choosing to do what, they are all following what? They are all within Ishvara's order. Because all transactions take place within what? Physical and subtle. N number of people, N number of desires, different objects of desires, different people of desires, different situations of desires, different desire for different knowledges. Everything is within all knowledge. Nothing is outside it.
So the output is proportional to the input.
Exactly. Right? So he says, in whatever form they pursue me, in that form I bless them. If they work really hard for being successful in a way that they want what? A nice house, they want a nice position, I bless them with that. Because that's what they have identified as their life goal. Okay. Somebody wants to just leave all these normal pursuits and become an artist. Is that person away from Ishvara's order? No.
You will find Ishvara in the art.
Exactly. The art is also Ishvara. Ishvara is the greatest artist. Look at, when a child draws, you ask a child to draw. What will he draw? Mountains, rivers, right? Then trees. And you say, the child is such a good artist. But who is the original artist? Who's created those beautiful, majestic mountains? Who's created these gigantic, beautiful trees? You go to Redwood Forest in California and you see the trees and you are like, oh my God, these thousands of years of old trees, these tall trees, the entire forest. Who has done that? Who's the first artist? Ishvara. We just replicate. Okay. So even if you are pursuing art, you are within Ishvara. You sculpt things. Who has sculpted human body? Who has sculpted these millions of species, all with all its variety? Who's the first sculptor? Ishvara. No matter what you do, find one pursuit. You go to medical school and you study eyes and you spend 8 years studying the physical anatomy, then the specific eyes, then you again within the eyes you study the retina and you become a retinologist. You spend all these years studying human body. Who has created the human body? And already the eyes are already created. Are you outside Ishvara? no matter what you do, you are within me. Either you seek me partially or you seek me fully. That is again your use of your own free will. Nobody is excluded. This is where initially Surya in his meditation says, connect to this total. Then he switches and he says, think, when can you be away from the total? Can you go somewhere where you are away from the total? Wherever the mind goes, it is part of that total. There is a shift. Even if you want to, you can't be away from Ishvara. It is like in the morning class I said, either you seek one part of the elephant or you seek the whole. But all are seeking the elephant alone. So this is what he says. I bless them, my laws bless them in whatever way you invoke them. And my Vartama alone, not only moksha, people who seek moksha. Okay, follow me, everybody follows me. That is the next verse. Then the next verse is a little bit intricate, we will see tomorrow. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti.